Welcome to this Saturday's Travel and History Tip. And yesterday, many of us remembered September 11th, 2001, the day that Manhattan was changed forever, and not only Manhattan, but actually the rest of the world. The nightmare hasn't ended. You can see ads like this in the subways and out on the streets, still alerting people if they have issues as a result of 9/11 that they can contact someone and maybe be helped. But I want to talk about the World Trade Center just for a minute. One World Trade Center is also known as One World Trade Center, One WTC, or Freedom Tower, and it is the main building of the rebuilt World Trade Center complex in Lower Manhattan, New York City. One WTC is the tallest building in the United States, the tallest building in the Western Hemisphere, and the 7th tallest in the world. The super tall structure has the same name as the North Tower of the original World Trade Center. The New York skyscraper stands on the northwest corner of the 16-acre World Trade Center site, on the site of the original 6th World Trade Center. Freedom Tower is obviously the tallest building in Manhattan at 1,773 feet. The names of those who died associated with each tower are etched in stone at the respective north and south pools, which are placed on the footprints of WTC-1 and WTC-2. We have seen portions of the steel beams from the WTCs at many museums across the country. Back in the summer of 1993, we actually entered the ground floor of the North Tower, which had recently been bombed and was under repair at that time. I am fortunate to have been able to go into the World Trade Center towers and go to the observation deck many years ago. The survivor tree is the Callery pear tree that stands distinct from the hundreds of swamp white oak trees on the memorial. It was discovered amidst the wreckage of the 9/11 attacks. Its bark was charred from fires at the site and many of its limbs reduced to stumps. Yet somehow the tree, still bearing leaves, showed signs of life. The recovery workers transported the tree to a nursery in the Bronx to be cared for by the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation. With careful tending, the stumps of the burned and gnarled bark gave growth to longer and smoother branches. Replanted at the 9/11 memorial in December of 2010, the survivor tree burst into magnificent blossoms each spring, embodying a living symbol of resilience. And here is the great spherical caryatid placed in the World Trade Center Plaza in 1971, and it's called the Sphere. It was also recovered from the rubble of WTC following the attack, and it was redonated by the insurance corporation that I guess was responsible for its value, and placed as a memorial to those who died on September 11th, 2001 at the World Trade Center. We also want to note that the tragedy in Benghazi also occurred on September 11th, but it was in 2012, and the truth still has not been told about that event. But today, I want to take us to another tragedy in America, the Oklahoma City National Memorial and Museum in Oklahoma City, as we were in Oklahoma City this past week. The Oklahoma City National Memorial and Museum memorializes the tragic event that jolted America on April 19, 1995. The horrific bombing of the 9-story Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building was the costliest act of terrorism up to that time on U.S. soil. Over 700 people were injured and 168 people were killed. The 3.3-acre outdoor symbolic memorial was dedicated on the 5th anniversary of the bombing. And I want to make a note here. Historians will notice that April 19th pops up as a major date in history, just like July 4th, as I have mentioned. In the 21st century, September 11th is a repeated date of notable events. The gates of time forever frame a moment of destruction and tragedy. The 901 gate is a symbolic reference to the last minute of innocence for our nation in regards to domestic terrorism. The 903 gate is a symbolic reference to the first moment of recovery, the moment when grieving and healing began. The time of 9:02 a.m. stretches between the two, presenting a tragically long minute in which citizens were killed, survived, and changed forever. The Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building was located just to the south of the reflecting pool, where today a grass lawn holds 168 empty chairs. The 9-story Murrah Building occupied an entire city block in downtown Oklahoma City. And as you can see here, the eastern corner of the original Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building remains just off Robinson Avenue. Today, this remaining portion of the building is termed the Survivor Wall and holds 4 granite panels. Engraved upon these panels, which were salvaged from the Murrah Building, are the names of those who survived this tragedy. The north face of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building served as the business entrance and is now represented by the north line of loblolly pine trees. The salient parked the Ryder truck filled with explosives along this north face. One can locate the approximate position of the truck by considering the native loblolly pine trees that stand on the site today. Beginning at the 901 gate and looking west upon the north tree line, you can count 4 pines down to view where the tragedy began. The bomb damaged 347 buildings in the immediate area. 30 buildings were heavily damaged, and since then, approximately 16 buildings were torn down. 20 blocks of downtown OKC were cordoned off due to the bomb's extent. Today, the children's area occupies a space where once stood a small annex building containing the printing pad for the Journal Record building. These buildings were all too heavily damaged to be repaired, and after the bombing, were demolished. The Journal Record building houses the Oklahoma City National Memorial Museum. At the time of the bombing, it was the headquarters of the Law Journal Record Publishing Company. Built in 1922, the Oklahoma City National Memorial is part of the National Park Service. The outdoor symbolic memorial is a place of quiet reflection honoring victims, survivors, rescuers, and all who were changed forever on April 19, 1995, capturing and preserving forever the place and events that changed the world. The Memorial Museum consists of 2 floors of exhibit space that detail the bombing and its aftermath, including the rescue efforts and the investigation that followed. There is a charge to enter the museum. When we entered the property, I found this area where they had these chalkboards, and I quickly found a piece of chalk and did a little artwork. We have been to a few places across the country that have this type of thing, either on the ground or upright, and I always love to put in my 2 cents. I wonder how long this would last. The Rescuer Orchard is in an area where the Oklahoma Water Resources and Athenian building once stood. Both sustained heavy damage and require demolition. The orchard symbolically rushes in from both the east and west on the memorial grounds towards the survivor tree. This placement was selected as a tribute to the rescue workers who rushed in to help following the disaster. 3 tree varieties were selected: Oklahoma redbud, Amur maple, and Chinese pistache. The Oklahoma redbud is nearest to the survivor tree in honor of the Oklahomans first on the scene. These monumental twin gates frame the moment of destruction and mark the formal entrances to the memorial. The 901 gate represents the innocents before the attack. The 903 gate symbolizes the moment healing began. The pool occupies what was once Northwest 5th Street. Here, a shallow depth of gently flowing water helps soothe wounds, with calming sounds providing a peaceful setting for quiet thoughts. The placid surface creates a reflection of someone changed forever by their visit to the memorial. You are entering the area where the Alfred P. Murrah building once stood. The granite used on this pathway was salvaged from the Murrah building. The field of empty chairs is a tribute to the 168 Americans who were killed April 19, 1995. The 9 rows represent the 9 floors of the former Murrah building. Each person's chair is positioned in the row that corresponds to the floor on which they worked or were visiting. The 5 westernmost empty chairs honor those who were killed outside the Murrah building. Each chair bears the name of someone killed on that floor. 19 smaller chairs stand for the children. The chairs are also arranged to abstractly reflect the outline of the blast cavity of the Murrah building, with the densest concentration of chairs reflecting the severest damage to the building. As darkness falls, the chairs light up, becoming, in the words of the memorial's designer, 168 beacons of hope. Like World Trade Center Plaza, there is a survivor tree, a 100-year-old American elm. It is the only tree in the surrounding area that survived the bombing. It stands as a beacon of hope, survival, and resilience. Immediately surrounding the survivor tree, small eastern Oklahoma redbud trees represent the Oklahoma first responders. These responders were the first to the scene. The 2 remaining trees are the Chinese pistache and the Amur maple. These are non-native trees to Oklahoma, representing the rescuers who came from across the nation and world. Part of the original fencing, which quickly assumed the role of a memorial just after the incident, is preserved on the site, named The Fence. It is a place where visitors leave mementos. This is actually our 2nd visit to this memorial. We were there just 2 years after the event, where the fence was loaded and so was the sidewalk. Now that it's been all these years, the fence still remains as an active place for those to place a memorial and a remembrance. Children were a significant part of the worldwide response in April 1995, responding with words of encouragement and messages of hope for rescue workers specifically and Oklahomans in general. Thousands of ceramic tiles were sent to Oklahoma in 1995. A sample of those tiles is now a permanent part of the Oklahoma City Memorial, and this is just right between the museum and the chalk area. And as we returned to the chalk area heading back to our car, someone had erased my note. We build our future. We honor our heroes, not tear down our past. American history. Learn it, love it, appreciate it. Thank you.